Okay, picture this. You have a modern warship just sailing peacefully through international waters, then out of nowhere it's hit by a torpedo. It sinks, and it takes dozens of sailors down with it. Now, this isn't some declared war zone, so the question is huge. Was this a legitimate act of naval warfare, or was it something else entirely?
These are the cold, hard facts. On March 4, 2026, the Iranian frigate, the IRS Dina, was sunk, and the attacker? A U.S. submarine. But the location? That's what makes this so shocking. It was hundreds of miles away from any recognized battlefield, just off the coast of Sri Lanka. You can imagine, this single event sent absolute shockwaves across the globe.
So, to really get a grip on this controversy, we've got to rewind a little. Let's trace the ship's final journey and figure out exactly what it was doing in those waters in the first place. You see, the ship's last official mission makes this whole thing even more puzzling. The IRS Dana had just participated in Milan 2026. Now, this is a major naval exercise hosted by India, really a mission of peace and diplomacy. So it was on what should have been a completely routine, peaceful passage home when it was sunk, right in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
And we can't forget the human cost here. At least 80 sailors lost their lives. This wasn't just some strategic move on a map. It was a deadly, deadly attack, with a tragic and very real loss of life.
So this brings us right to the heart of the matter. How on earth can an attack like this, so far away from any active conflict zone, possibly be justified under international law? Well, the answer, it forces us to dive into some very, very murky legal waters.
To even begin to find an answer, we need to unpack the legal rules that govern what happens out on the high seas. And let me tell you, it's way more complex than you might think, because there isn't just one single set of rules for the ocean.
First up, you've got UNCLOS, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. You can think of it as the constitution for the oceans, but it's mainly focused on peacetime. And here's a crucial little detail. The United States has never actually signed on to it.
But because this happened during a time of armed conflict, a whole different set of rules kicks in, the law of naval warfare. This one runs parallel to UNCLOS, and really, this is where the justification for the attack starts to take shape.
And finally, there's the foundation of international law when it comes to conflict, Article 51 of the UN Charter. This gives every nation the right to self-defense. It's cited all the time to justify using force, but the key phrase, the one that matters most, is if an armed attack occurs.
Okay, so with all those laws in mind, we finally arrive at the core of the debate. Was the IRS Dina actually a legitimate target under these circumstances? Let's break down the arguments.
So how does all this apply? Well, the argument for a legal strike is actually quite straightforward. The IRS Dina was an official warship of an adversary, period. Under the law of naval warfare, once there's a conflict, any enemy warship is a legitimate target, literally anywhere on the globe. But the case for it being unlawful? That's just as compelling. I mean, the ship was on a peaceful passage, coming back from a diplomatic mission. It wasn't in a hot zone. It wasn't engaging in any hostilities, which makes it really, really difficult to frame this as some clear-cut act of self-defense.
And if you're thinking this is all a bit confusing, well, you're not alone. The legal and naval experts, the people who live and breathe this stuff, are completely divided on it.
Just listen to Vice Admiral G.S. Kumar, the former Vice Chief of the Indian Navy. He argues that this whole idea of a battle zone is basically meaningless at sea. In modern naval warfare, the entire ocean is the battlefield. So from his point of view, the location of Sri Lanka, it's completely irrelevant.
But then, you get a totally opposite take from Rear Admiral Sudhir Pillai. He says an attack like this is automatically or presumptively unlawful. The burden of proof is entirely on the attacker to prove it was absolutely necessary for self-defense under Article 51. And that's a very high bar that he suggests this incident might not clear.
And this really highlights the crucial element of surprise here. According to one senior Indian Navy official, the crew of the Didana probably never even saw it coming. Why would they? They were on a peaceful mission far from any conflict and likely weren't on high alert. And that's exactly why this official called the attack a big escalation. It just completely changed the rules of engagement.
So, look, beyond the legal back and forth and the tragic loss of life, why does this one incident in the Indian Ocean actually matter to the rest of us? What are the bigger consequences here?
Right, so the sinking of the Dina didn't just happen in a vacuum. It dramatically stretched the geographic scope of the conflict, bringing it right into India's backyard and shaking up the security of the entire Indian Ocean.
This sets a really dangerous precedent. It just blurs the line between a conflict zone and international waters. And now every nation has to be asking itself, are our naval ships even safe when they're on peaceful diplomatic missions?
And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty unsettling question. As conflicts become more global, more interconnected, does the very concept of a limited war zone even exist anymore? Or has the entire ocean just become one big potential battlefield where any ship can become a target at any time?